أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأحلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله وعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. The life and lessons of Nabi Sulayman alayhi salatu wasalam has been our ongoing topic. Tonight is lecture number 9. So just one logistical announcement that I'm sure that the community will make. Tomorrow night, of course, is the shab, or the night of the wafat of Bibi Khadija salamullah alayha. We will take a break from the topic and dedicate the entire lecture tomorrow night and majlis to the first wife of the Holy Prophet. So we'll continue this discussion after tonight on the night of the 11th of Mahr Ramadan, inshallah. Now, we've got, it's getting good now, guys. We've reached that point in the story now where things are now picking up now. Things get really interesting now inside the kingdom of Nabi Sulayman. Hudhud goes missing after Hajj, and we find out that he was actually in a place called Sabah, or Sheba as it's called, which is the capital of Yemen back then. Yemen, a beautiful tropical coastal area. And he comes across another bird of his type. I've come across two different pronunciations. Either it's Hupi or it's Hupo, let's say. But nonetheless, we'll refer to him as Hudhud inside of the Quran and use the Quranic terminology. And, so Nabi Sulaiman is a little bit annoyed that I have no idea where he is now. He leaves without telling me where he is. And, when you're trying to run a kingdom and you're trying to protect everybody, you have to know where everybody is at all times. So where is Hudhud? The eagle has no idea. The falcon has no idea where Hudhud is, until finally when the eagle now is sent above, he can see Hudhud now coming back essentially to the kingdom of Sulayman. And when he arrives in the presence of Nabi Sulayman, now of course he has to answer for himself, where were you? Remember, one of the conditions of his release, quote unquote, from punishment was that you better have a really good explanation of where you were this whole time. And turns out that he was. Explains what he saw. Went to Yemen now, all from the Quran last night, right? We are right now in Surah An-Naml, all in the Quran. I went to a place called Sheba. I saw this massive kingdom that's run by a woman, and she governs the entire kingdom. These are people who are now worshiping idols or worshiping a statue like the sun, thinking that that's God, right? Shaitan has made it beautiful for them, okay? And when he sees this now, he thinks to himself, I have to go back and tell the king. So now he's telling Nabi Sulaiman all of this, and Nabi Sulaiman is quiet. And where I left you guys off last night was, what was the response of Nabi Sulaiman? I promised that I would tell you guys tonight. So what does he do? He neither confirms nor he denies what Hudhud is saying. I mean, he does not say, oh my God, we have to do something, or nor does he say, no, you're absolutely wrong. Instead, he says, let's find out. Let's find out if you are actually true. And he decides to write a letter to the queen. Her name was Bilqis, the queen of Sheba, the queen of Saba. Okay? And he actually begins to pen this letter up bit by bit, and he asked actually one of his individuals, and this is somebody who will later on play a very key role, Asif ibn Barkhia. Okay, some describe him as the right hand of Nabi Sulayman, his scriber perhaps, the one who would pen his letters. Nonetheless, he summons Asif ibn Barkhia. And he begins to write a letter to Bilqis, the Queen of Sheba. Tells Hudhud, take this letter and deliver it. Deliver it such that no one sees you deliver it. Drop it where she can find it. Hide off in the corner and examine what her response will be and come back and report it. Let's see what her response is. Okay? So basically, this was Nabi Sulayman that was adamant about proving the fact, was this right or was this wrong? Again, guys, I will pull small tidbits of akhlaqi lessons here and there, small ones where I seem fit. Even this one now, he wasn't ready to jump to conclusions, Nabi Sulayman. It's not like he said, oh, how dare they, that's it, we're going to invade them. No, let's hear them out. Let's approach them. Let's find out, how are they going to respond to my letter, right? It's a very, very beautiful approach, and one that I think we have to adopt sometimes when we want to propagate the religion and maybe encourage somebody towards piety. It can't all be, look, do this or you're bound for the hellfire. Wait a second now, right? Wait a second now, okay? So, and I'll expand on that in a little bit later. Hudhud now grabs the letter, makes his way back to the palace of Bilqis, and quietly now enters, the private chambers, drops the letter on her throne, and the Quran now says hides a little bit behind the curtain, out of view now, and he waits. Just like Nabi Sulaiman told him, wait and let's see what happens. Okay. Now Bilqis finds the letter. Very odd. Opens it. Reads it. And Tafsir says she's a little bit concerned about its contents. She pauses for a moment. She thinks all this now in the Quran. In a moment now we'll go bit by bit and revisit. Visit those verses. So have your Quran ready for Surah Naml. Now that's the chapter that we're going to stay in for the rest of the lecture series. Chapter number 27. Okay, in successive verses from about 25 all the way down to about 40, 44 maybe. They talk about this entire story. So now she reads the letter, and she pauses for a moment, and then she calls her chiefs, her advisors, tells them about this letter from this King Solomon, this king of Sulayman, and asks him, what do we do? What is it that we should do? And right away, of course, the first reaction was, there are men, right? The first reaction was, don't worry about it. We're strong. We'll handle it. We have an army of men. You're not weak, Queen. If we need to go and defend them or attack them, then so be it. But whatever you decide, that's what's going to happen. But her decision had nothing. She didn't even have war in her mind. She said no. And, I'll go through the verses in about 2 minutes because I really want to extract certain letters, certain Arabic words that were used to beautifully describe these events that I'm telling you just kind of, as a narration right now. But, war was never on the table for her. She knew, of course, the kingdom of Nabi Sulayman was so large and so big and so monumental that everybody in the area knew exactly who he was, what he stood for, meaning God, and how large of a kingdom he had. Now, her first thought was that if I do this, right? If we go to war now, if I respond with a hostile reply, I could lose all this, and I could put all these people now in jeopardy. The other thing that is very, very important to realize here was that she didn't decide right away. She actually asked her advisors, what do you think we should do, asking advice. Meaning that there was this softness about Bilqis that the Quran captures. Okay? And it wasn't like, what? How dare they, who does he think he is, writing me a letter, I'm the Queen of Sheba, this and that. No. Asking the advice of her advisors and her chiefs was a sign of humbleness. It's a sign of a great leader. It reminds me of the story of, at the time of the Holy Prophet, during all those wars, the war of Khandaq, the war of Ahzab, the war of the trench, right? That trench was a brilliant idea. Essentially, the idea was to dig a trench around the camp of the Muslims to deter the army, meaning Abu Sufyan and his men, to come and attack, maybe perhaps delay that attack, right? That wasn't the Prophet's idea. It was an idea that Salman al-Farsi gave him. But for him not only to ask for someone's advice and then apply it is a sign of a great leader and one that's very, very humble. The Queen of Sheba now, you would think that the power would get to any person. She does not react right away, which means that there is a logical bone in her body. Sometimes, when you have that much power, and the way that Hudhud had described the kingdom, and the way that we know Yemen to be back then, I could only imagine what a breathtaking view her kingdom would be. There had to be this sense of narcissism inside of her, an ego inside of her. Look, this beautiful coastal, scenic kingdom is all mine, right? I'm the one that's the queen of all this. You would think that would corrupt the heart of someone like that, but it doesn't. There is softness in the heart that later on, comes into play, but not yet. Okay? When we see these moments now, okay? When we see these moments of, softness, of no ego inside queens and kings in history, it reminds me of, the day of Ashura, of course. I know it's a tough segue, but Janab bin Hur now. Hur was one of the commanders of Umar bin Saad's army. He was a heavyweight in that camp. But throughout history and any sort of moment that history would write about Hur and his reaction and interaction with Imam Hussein, there was this softness about him that eventually now, as he said, placed him between heaven and hell, and he makes his way towards Imam Hussein, the history right? So, it's bound to be when the Quran and the scripture captures these brief, soft moments, it means that, they're leading towards good. They just need the right people around them. And she didn't have the right people around them. She had people who were ready for war. The moment she asked her chiefs, what do we do? Let's go. Let's go to war. We can do this. Where? She's like, wait a second. No, wait. We could be putting our entire civilization here at risk here. Let's be smart about this. Okay? And so they put their heads together and they come up with a plan. Before that, however, let's come to the verses, inshallah. Okay? So where we left off was Surah Naml, chapter 27, verse 27 now. When now Hudhud tells Nabi Sulayman the entire story, what he saw, what he experienced in Sheba, in Saba, in Yemen. And then he says, this is now he speaking, meaning Nabi Sulayman, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. From verse 27, a little bit down now, follow along please. قَالَ سَنَنُظُرُ أَصَدَقْتَ. Let's see. We'll see whether you have told the truth, right? أَمْ كُنْتَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. Or you're lying, or you're making this whole up just to save yourself, right? How does he know that maybe on his way back, he thought about, okay, what excuse, right? You're given a certain curfew, you're late, your parents are going to ask you, where were you? What do I tell my parents? That's kind of what Hudhud was thinking, right? What do I tell Nabi Sulayman? And Nabi Sulayman now had to, of course, he had to make sure this was a proper story. So then now this letter now, verse 28 now. So he commands now, Asad ibn Baqiyah says, come and write this letter. He wrote the letter now. And then he gives it to Hudhud. He says, what? إِذْهَبْ بِكِتَابِ هَذَا فَأَلْقِي إِلَيْهِمْ. Take this letter of mine and hand it over to them. Meaning just kind of drop it there. فَأَلْقِهْ إِلَيْهِمْ. Meaning just drop it there. right? Remember the idea of dropping it there, like the verb is fa'alqih. If you look at the Arabic in verse 28, fa'alqih meaning just drop it. It's the same verse that is used when the moment that the mother of Nabi Musa is asked to drop him inside the river. فَأَلْقِهِ فِي الْيَمِّ. Drop him in the river. Meaning just kind of drop it and go, basically. So he's being told now, take this, إِذْهَبْ بِكِتَابِي هَذِهِ. Take this letter of mine, this بِكِتَابِي, this letter of mine. فَأَلْقِي إِلَيْهِمْ. Just drop it and go, basically. ثُمَّ تَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ. After that, turn away from them, hide from them, go somewhere where you're out of sight. فَانظُر, look, examine, kind of spy on them a little bit, see what they're about to do. How does the reaction of the letter happen, right? مَاذَا يَرْجِعُونَ. Then come back and report to me. Okay? Come back and tell me what happens. So wait there, wait to see what happens, then come back and report. Now, in that meantime, what the Quran does not capture and what is assumed between 28 and 29 is that the letter is read and she finds the letter and there's, now where do I get this reaction of, she seems concerned? That's from Bihar al-Anwar, right? We have in ahadith that fill in these gaps where she seemed concerned. Concerned obviously because, this could possibly turn out to be a war of kingdoms, right? And this is where in verse number 29, she calls out her chiefs. Qalat is a female. So we know qala is a man saying something. Qalat is a woman saying something. So she said now, the she of course being the queen of Sheba. Ya ayyuhal mala'u, oh my chiefs. Oh my chiefs. Now she summons the chiefs. Come, my advisors, come. Inni alqiya ilayya kitabun kareem. Very, very carefully, please. Please, very carefully, right? Surely an honorable letter has been delivered to me. Why does she feel the need to call this kitabun? Kitab means book. It could mean letter too, right? Kataba in Arabic means to write. It has different meanings sometimes in the Arabic language. For example, in the Quran, sometimes it's used to denote obligation, right? Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Kutiba, siyam is fasting, right? Kutiba ya'ani wajaba. Fasting has been written for you, meaning fasting is made an obligation for you. Anyways, so here, however, she uses the adjective of honorable. Now, a lot of discussion in tafsir. What made this letter so honorable? Some tafsir say, and I'll take the tafsir of Allama Tabatabai in Mizan, he also includes other tafsir, which he rejects though. Some say that what made the letter honorable was that it was sealed. Because Nabi Sulayman had the letter written and then he put his seal on it. He put his mohr, his stamp on it. Okay? And it becomes an official letter from the king. Right? Anything official from the government has honor to it. That's one possible explanation. Right? But Allama rejects that. Allama Tabatabai in Tafsir Mizan says that what made it honorable had to have been the contents of the letter. Please follow me very carefully. Keep in mind, who is it that the Prophet of God is addressing? This is a queen of the kingdom of idol worshippers. Okay? Now, by the way, let me make this one point here as well. I know I'm going a mile a minute. I'm super excited tonight. Super. This is just, it's getting better and better and better, and hopefully you guys can feel my energy through the camera lens. When we're talking about people who would worship the sun back then, these were not people who would reject the oneness of God. Follow me very carefully, okay? They would believe in a God, in one God. But they didn't believe that this God was the ruler or Rabb of the entire universe. Very much like Fir'aun. Fir'aun believed in a God, but he believed that the God was up there and he did godly things. He did the overall supervision of the universe, but the day-to-day interactions belonged to small little gods. Like Fir'aun called himself, I am your Rabb, I am your Lord. It doesn't mean that he is denouncing the one God, but he believes that him to be a partner in God. Yes, a mushrik, no doubt, but there's a belief in one God. So they knew the concept of Allah, same idea, okay? The sun, for them, played a role of a portion of the God. So they would extract that and make the sun, a minor God per se to a larger God. Okay? So I don't want you guys to think for a second that these were people who denied, the the big G God, basically, the capital G God. But they were confused, obviously, right? So anytime that you extract the attributes of God and make them into different manifestations, that also is shirk, right? That also is polytheism. Anyways, so the contents of the letter were not foreign to Bilqis, okay? But more importantly to me, and the way that Allama says it in his tafsir, the approach of Nabi Sulayman to the queen of a kingdom of idol worshippers was very beautiful. He must have used honorable words, respectful words. He must have addressed her in the most respectful way. Meaning what? That he didn't say, look, you're an idol worshiper, you're bound for hellfire, you're my enemy, and harsh words. Again, guys, a beautiful lesson for you and I. Forget anyone else. Sometimes the way that we speak to each other, when it comes to people who may not be at the same spiritual wavelength as me, right? We address people harshly. Let's say the sister can't wear hijab. It's difficult for her to wear hijab. But she has the hijab of the heart, the hijab of the tongue, the hijab of the eyes, right? She's not judgmental. She doesn't look down on people, doesn't talk ill of people. She just can't bring herself to cover her hair. But you, a muhajjaba sister who covers her hair, that's all you do, right? Your heart is corrupt. You look down on others. You judge others, right? I mean, that's one example, right? Another example are people, let's say, for example, who find a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of tawfiq, right? My young guys, all of a sudden now, you have this awakening moment. You're woke now, as you guys would say, all of a sudden. And, all of a sudden now the same guy who you were yesterday, now you look down on someone like that with harsh words, right? He's a lost cause, he's gone, right? Sometimes our elders, I love you to death, but sometimes our elders look at our young guys, the way they dress, maybe a little bit of a longer hair, maybe even a piercing or two. And you think to himself, look at this kid. No hidayat, no guidance, gumrah, he's off the path, he's a lost cause, he's useless, you're wasting your time, Moulana, blah, blah, blah. I kid you not. Years ago, I was addressing a Muharram Ashra. After my lecture, a kid came to me. He had hair down to his shoulders. Okay? He had one earring, a loop earring here, the tightest of jeans, and maybe a little bit of a red shirt, 8th or 9th Muharram. Not your typical mosque goer outfit. Okay? And he had brilliant questions to me about my lecture. I'm talking to him for a good half an hour. I'm intrigued by this kid. Obviously, he's well read. His akhlaq was amazing. The way he addressed him was respectful. He was talking about knowledge. And after he left, I had 2 elders come to me. Say, why do you waste your time with people like this? Look at him. No matter what you say, it won't pen. This is not the approach, I'm sorry. This is where we have to understand Nabi Sulayman is addressing the queen of the kingdom of mushrikeen, of idol worshippers, who've played with the image of God. But yet we see the fact that she felt honored by his words. If we want to help somebody out, if we want to invite them towards the path of God, if we want to perhaps, motivate them to be better, there's a way of doing it. There's words to be used. There's honor to be given. They're ultimately still a human being, right? They're not someone who you're just kind of dismissed to the hellfire. No, not at all. So this idea, look what she says. Ilayya kitabun kareem. This honorable letter has come to me. And then she describes in verse number 30, Innahu min Sulayman. This is from Sulayman. Wa innahu bismillahir rahmanir rahim. In a lot of our trivia quiz competitions, if you guys remember, I would always ask, my young guys sometimes, and just as a quiz during our camps, how many Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahims are there in the Quran? 114. Okay. But Surah Tawbah is missing a Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Surah Tawbah is the only surah in the Quran does not start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So where is that extra Bismillah? It always It always stumps them. So there's 100, no, you're right. There's 114 Bismillahs. The actual word Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim shows up 114 times in the Quran for sure. But where is that 114th? Fine, the other 113 surahs all start with that Bismillah. Where is that one? And this is the one in Surah Namal. This is the one where now he begins his letter by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Right? In the most beautiful way. And of course she knew who Sulayman was, she knew who Allah was. Okay? Which may have caused the confusion, how do I tackle this now? Okay? Allama says this was not something that she was even attempting now to start a coup or attack or, no, not at all. Okay? Now describing this to her advisors, her chiefs, right? And in the letter it says, Allah ta'alu alayya wa'atuni muslimin. Now very carefully now. In the letter he says, look, there's no reason for you now to be all egotistical against me. You know that my kingdom will devour yours. Okay? He's saying, if you're gonna, he says, come to me, right? Wa'atuni, come to me, but come to me in the state of what? Muslimin. Now here, Allama Tabatabai in his tafsir says, Muslimin here does not mean, convert to a Muslim and come. No. Come in a submissive form. Come to me in a submissive form. Meaning what? Come to me open for dialogue. Open for dialogue. I want you to open your heart and hear what I have to say. Don't come, with aggression. Don't come looking to attack. Don't come with a closed mind. Absolutely not. I've taken, and I'm paraphrasing here. I've taken, time out of my schedule to write you a letter. I have addressed you with the utmost respect. I've began in the name of that Allah who is Rahman ar-Rahim. Now come to me open-minded. Okay? Basically, a call for tabligh. He was not only a king, guys, he's a prophet of God. His job is, of course, to invite people towards God. But the way he would do it was case by case, right? There are some people who don't react to you unless you're stern with them. There are some people who react to you very lovingly when you have a soft tone with them, right? When Allah now is addressing Nabi Musa to go and talk to Fir'aun about me and tell him his ways are wrong, right? وَقُولُوا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Speak to him with a soft tone. Surah Taha, verse number 44. So, address him very softly. Maybe, لَعَلَّهُ, it could be that maybe he has khushu in his heart and he has a dhikr inside of me, for me. Maybe he might turn and come towards me, if you use a soft tone. Here now, Nabi Sulayman is telling her directly, come to me, but don't even start to be, aggressive with me. Otherwise, it's not going to turn out good for you. Now she turns to her chiefs. Now she reads the letter, she ponders for a minute, and she addresses her chiefs. قالت يا أيها الملأ, right? أفتوني في أمره. Give me your advice. What do you think? Right? Aftuni, fataya, same word is from fatwa as well. Fatwa is a ruling, right? So she's asking you in this command, in my affair, what I'm dealing with right now, this letter, what do you think I should do? Right? Aftuni, tell me. Right? And then she reminds them, ما كنتم قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدوا. I never decided anything until you guys are present. Again, a sign of her what? Her softness. That's a sign of a beautiful leader, guys. That, this is my command and that's it. You didn't even, I don't have to ask you to have this. No, right? A leader, and especially a leader inside the home. To my men in the audience listening, my husbands and my fathers, you may be given that leadership. It doesn't mean that you have an iron fist, a Fir'auni fist, that, what I say goes, I say this. Wait a second now. These are not your subordinates or your servants. That's your spouse and these are your beautiful children. If you want to now lead them towards paradise and salvation, adopt. This is a queen of a kingdom of idol worshippers. Look at her tone. I would never decide. I want, right? Advice. Seeking advice of others. Seeking advice of others is a beautiful trait for us to have. Okay? A beautiful trait for us to have. Now, right away now, they hear this letter and, their first thought is, let's protect the kingdom. قَالُوا نَحْنُ أُولُو الْقُوَّةِ. We have strength. We have power. We're strong men. We're possessors of strength. وَأُولُو الْبَعْسٍ شَدِيدٍ. Right? And we have mighty prowess. No one can show us. Basically, you can't push us around. You can't send a letter to us basically almost threatening us and us not respond. Right? وَالْأَمْرُ إِلَيْكَ فَانْظُرِي مَاذَا تَأْمُرِينَ. And the command is yours. Therefore, see what you will command. Basically saying, look, reminding you that we are here to defend you at all costs. If you need our power, no problem. But whatever you decide, we're ready to accept. Okay? Whatever you decide, we are ready to accept. Okay? Now the question is, how does she handle this? How does she respond to Nabi Sulayman? Does she rip up the letter? Does she say, forget it? Does she ghost him? Does she freeze him out? Does she leave him unread, as you guys would say on WhatsApp? What does she do to him? I mean, how do you respond to that? At one moment now, your advisor looking at you, you have this kingdom now who's waiting for you to respond. On the next moment, you have this honor of the letter, you have the name of God, you have the name of the Rahman Rahim. How do you respond to that? How did the Queen of Sheba respond to Nabi Sulayman? And she responded, I'll tell you, in 2 nights, inshallah. I know, don't hate me, inshallah. Keep you hanging. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our efforts, to let us understand now that the story is not meant only to be a narration, but meant to be a blueprint for the various areas of our life, inshallah. We ask you, Allah, now we are 9 nights into the month of Ramadan. Accept our amal, forgive our sins, and allow us to elevate slowly towards you. Tomorrow night will be the Wafat Majlis. The night after, we will answer the question of what does Bilqis do with the letter. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.